The movie kicks off in 1974 with a war vet named Max Erikson riding a subway train. As a young Vietnamese woman steps onto the train, Erikson watches her with a worried expression. She suddenly brings back memories of his time in the Vietnam War. Next, we jump back to a flashback set in 1966 during the Vietnam War. An American scout team is on a mission to find secret tunnels that the Viet Cong used for surprise attacks. One night, deep in the forest, they suddenly hear mortar fire. They look at the map and see that nearby soldiers are being attacked by the enemy. Lieutenant Riley tells his team to pay attention to the gunfire, find out where the enemy is, and then let headquarters know their current location. Out of nowhere, one of the soldiers, scared, begins firing at a Vietnamese soldier. This gives away their position and lets the enemy know where they are. Before long, mortar fire begins to pour down, and some soldiers lose their lives while others rush to find safety. While patrolling solo, young Private First Class Max Erikson looks for shelter after hearing an explosion close by. Out of nowhere, the ground shakes, and he tumbles into a hidden Viet Cong tunnel, getting his legs stuck. While air support shows up and starts hitting the enemy, Erikson is still stuck in the tunnel. Little does he know, a Viet Cong soldier with a knife is sneaking up on him through the narrow tunnel. Before he can attack, Sergeant Tony Meserve gets to Erikson. The Americans regroup and take down the enemies, one by one. The next morning, Erikson, Meserve, and their squad, which includes Corporal Thomas Clark, Private Hatcher, and Sergeant Brownie, head to a nearby river village for some temporary shelter. Erikson stands out from his squad because he's friendly with the local kids, while his teammates are wary of everyone in Vietnam. Even with the war's tense vibe, Erikson stays true to his humanity by treating the locals with respect and lending a hand when necessary. Later, Sergeants Brownie and Meserve remind their soldiers how crucial it is to follow orders without question, especially since their time in Vietnam is winding down. But at that moment, Viet Cong soldiers are tucked away in the bushes. Out of nowhere, they start shooting at the Americans, and sadly, Sergeant Brownie gets seriously hurt. The American soldiers are totally caught off guard, but they pull together to fend off the attack and take out the enemies. After this incident, Meserve's squad gets a 48-hour leave, and they're all set for a night out in the nearby town. But then, their leave gets canceled out of the blue, and they have to be on patrol at 6 a.m. the next day. That evening, they head out to scout the area. Meserve, feeling down about losing his close friend Brownie, wants to find some comfort with a local girl in the nearby village. Later that night, the squad gets to their outpost gate, ready to head into the village. But a guard and their company commander won't let them into a brothel. The commander tells them that they can't go into that area. The squad has to stay put until they get more orders. The soldiers realize they're stuck, so they head back to the barracks and wait for their morning march. Sergeant Meserve introduces Private First Class Antonio Diaz to the group as the new replacement for the late Brownie. Meserve fills the squad in on their next mission and lets them know they'll be leaving the next day, 2 hours earlier than expected. He wants to go to the nearby village and take a local girl for their own pleasure. Erikson can't believe what his boss just said. It's completely outrageous and even criminal. He talks about his worries with his friend, who reassures him that Meserve is probably just joking. Sadly, the next morning, the squad arrives at the village and takes a young girl named Tantaya on away from her family by force. Meserve tells Erikson they'll have a good time with the girl when they reach their outpost. Right after that, chaos breaks out in the village as family members beg the soldiers to let the girl go. But the soldiers just ignore all their pleas. Instead, they do something awful to the girl's sister, leaving Erikson in shock, unable to believe his friends could act like that. The soldiers, after taking the village girl for their twisted fun, just go on with their tasks. Erikson faces off with Sergeant Meserve, claiming they've committed a crime, but Meserve brushes him off and tells him to head out on patrol. Meanwhile, Private Hatcher and Corporal Clark find Meserve's actions entertaining and see no issue with them. Later, the group takes a break and tries to talk to the captive girl. Clark is the first to approach her, but Hatcher cuts in, claiming he spots someone in the bushes. He takes a shot, only to find out it was just an animal. The squad realizes that the gunshot might have revealed their position to the enemy, so they decide to move on and hold off on any more interaction with the girl. After a few hours, they stumble upon an old wooden cabin hidden deep in the woods. While Meserve, Clark and Hatcher check out the area, Diaz and Erickson tidy up the cabin. Diaz ends up being a good guy who really doesn't want to treat the girl badly. Since they see things the same way, Diaz and Erickson decide to back each other up. They want to ensure that no one is pressured into committing a crime. Erickson then approaches the captive girl, showing her compassion and care. He wins her trust and takes care of her injuries. Later, when the rest of the squad gets back to the cabin, Sergeant Meserve suggests they should interrogate the girl forcefully. He ties her hands and explains the order in which the soldiers will take their turn with her. Erickson is definitely shocked by the plan. He and Diaz are against the idea, saying they won't take part in the assault. But the sergeant warns that they'll be outcasts if they don't go along with it. Diaz is scared, and he hesitantly agrees to go along with the terrible act. Furious, Erickson tries to assist the girl, but Clark presses a knife to his throat and tells him to keep watch for the night. Erickson, feeling helpless, watches as his comrades carry out the terrible act. The next morning, the squad shows up at a hillside and sets up on a railroad bridge that looks over a Viet Cong River supply depot. They head out with Clark still in the cabin. They see a group of armed Vietnamese moving artillery shells nearby. They send the coordinates to headquarters and watch the enemy closely as they get ready for their mission. After a while, Erickson and Hatcher head back to the outpost to grab some supplies and pick up smoke grenades. When they get to the cabin, Clark feels unsure about staying with the girl, so he tells Erickson to take his spot instead. When they're by themselves, Erickson really understands how much Owen has been hurtful. She's feeling weak, cut up, bruised, dehydrated, and under the weather. He really feels bad for her situation, so he unties her and gives her something to eat and drink. At the railroad bridge, Sergeant Meserve is furious when his men come back without Erickson, so he tells Clark to head back to the outpost to get him. The sergeant is concerned that Erickson could take some extreme action, so Erickson decides to help Owen get back to her village. But she's really nervous about going by herself, so she pleads with Erickson to come along. Erickson knows that if he leaves the outpost with Owen, he'd be seen as a deserter. He might get in trouble for this, but after noticing the poor girl's desperate plea, he chooses to follow through with it. Right when they're about to make their getaway, Clark shows up and halts them. He makes them come back to the squad on the railroad bridge. Unfortunately, Erickson and Owen are pulled to the bridge and just hang out while the squad gets ready to launch their attack. Owen suddenly starts coughing because she's not feeling well. Meserve knows she might jeopardize their standing, so he tells Erickson to take her out. The hero says no, so the sergeant tells Hatcher to go for it, but he hesitates too. With helicopters coming closer, Meserve quickly tells Diaz to take her out. With his senior pushing him, Diaz makes a surprising choice. At that moment, Erickson shoots his rifle into the air to grab the Viet Cong's attention and manages to stop the murder. In the shootout between the American and Vietnamese soldiers, Clark stabs Owen several times. Unfortunately, Erickson is too caught up in battling the enemies to notice them. The situation gets tense when the Viet Cong start bringing mortars up the river and firing at the bridge. But Meserve and his team respond effectively, using a machine gun to take out the enemies one by one. Meanwhile, a seriously hurt Owen gets up and tries to make a run for it across the bridge below. As soon as Meserve spots her, he tells the squad to take her out. Erickson makes an attempt to stop them, but Meserve hits him with his gun and takes him down. Then, the squad fires at the poor girl several times, taking her life instantly. Her lifeless body falls off the bridge and lands on the ground below. After the incident, Meserve takes his men away from the scene. As Erickson lies on the railroad by himself, he barely sees American choppers launching an airstrike on the enemy's riverboat and spots Owen's mutilated body below. The explosion sets a nearby U.S. Navy boat on fire, taking the lives of everyone on board. Not long after, they airlift Erickson out by helicopter. He wakes up in a hospital and tells his friend Rowan about the kidnapping, assault, and murder of Owen. Rowan gets where he's coming from and suggests he chat with Lieutenant Riley. Erickson does the same, but unfortunately, Riley gives a long explanation. He points out that the incident might hurt the unit's operational record and suggests it might be better to just move on from it. Our hero is set on seeking justice, even if it means risking his military career by ignoring Riley's orders and telling Captain Hill about the incident. But Hill also reacts strongly and scolds Erickson. He tells him that going after this could mean harsh penalties for the soldiers and might bring trouble to Erickson and his family once the convicted guys are out. Meanwhile, Meserve finds out that Erickson had told the senior officers about Owen. This makes him really angry, and he decides to take him out with a grenade. That night, Erickson gets a bit suspicious when he spots Hatcher by the latrine door and then quickly darting away. He spots the grenade just in time and jumps out of the latrine right before it goes off. Erickson then faces off against Meserve and the other culprits. He lets them know that everyone is already aware of what they've done, but the authorities just won't listen to him. He says they should just leave him alone since they're never going to get convicted for their awful crime. Erickson ends up at a bar to drown his sorrows. A minister comes up to him and asks how he's feeling. Even though Erickson knows justice isn't coming, he opens up to the minister about the heartbreaking story of the village girl. Before long, an investigation kicks off and Owen's body is found by the riverside. Things are getting tense in the unit, and Captain Hill tells Erickson that his actions will have consequences since he couldn't just let it slide. In the next scene, each soldier is interviewed one by one, and they admit to their crimes. So, they end up getting court-martialed. Meserve gets 10 years of hard labor, Diaz gets 8 years, Hatcher gets 15, and Clark gets life. As they walk out of the court, Meserve leans in close to Erickson and whispers something inaudible, a wicked look in his eyes. Now, we move to the present. Erickson snaps out of his haunting flashback on the train. At the next stop, the Vietnamese woman who reminds him of Owen gets off the bus. He sees that she forgot her scarf. Erickson grabs it fast and hops off the train to give it back to her. As he gets closer to the woman, she sees a haunted look on his face. When she asks him about it, Erickson says he just woke up from a nightmare. The woman thanks him for the scarf and offers comfort, letting him know that his nightmare is behind him now. As the movie wraps up, you can see a slight smile on Erickson's face.